That is what we'll be talking about. As you may have seen in that welcoming slide, we've got the governor of Kaduna State, His Excellency Nasir El-Rufai. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us today on the program. Well,
good morning, Chamberlain.
All right, talking about the elections and how that panned out, and considering the feedback that you've received, perhaps word out there about how the electronic voting process turned out, how would you assess it, given the objectives that you also set out for that particular election?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain, for inviting me. First, let me start with the logic behind the electronic voting. We believe that it is all about election integrity. We believe that elections are the foundation of democracy, and everything must be done by every responsible government to ensure that people can vote in free and fair elections and their choices will matter. This is why from day one we decided to pursue this, and I'm happy that our Independent Electoral Commission took the necessary steps to bring in this technology. In 2018, we used it for the first time. There were issues about multiple voting. And in 2021, they improved the technology again to reduce the chances of multiple voting. The exercise, I would say, has been quite successful. Many people were suspicious. The opposition party claimed that the machines were programmed to deliver an APC victory. But overall, I think the whole process went quite well. We couldn't conduct elections in 4 local governments due to security concerns. But out of the 19 local governments where elections were conducted, PDP has won 1, Kaura in southern Kaduna. And we have won 4 of the local governments in southern Kaduna, and another 11 in the other 2 senatorial districts. So for me personally, the results of the election so far is a unifying moment for our state, which is what we've been working on. We want to work against this narrative that the PDP is a party for one part of the state, while the APC is a party for another part, or the PDP is a party of one religious affiliation and the APC is a party of another. The results of the election clearly shows we are finally uniting Kaduna State, and people are making choices based on performance of their elected officials. Those that claim that the machines were programmed were ashamed when it was reported that APC lost in my polling unit. People were laughing that I lost my polling unit, but it is democracy that won. I'm not on the ballot, so it's not a referendum on me, it's a referendum on the councillor and the performance of the local government chairman. And I'm happy it went very well, and I'm happy that the loss of my polling unit shows that we did not program these machines and we do not influence our Independent Electoral Commission. And the whole thing has worked very well. There are still issues that came up, and the Independent Electoral Commission is working on them. 2 local governments are still contentious. The results have not been communicated to me. SECOM has not announced on 2. I've been told that Kachia, one of the local governments, the results are inconclusive because the machines did not function in many polling units. Soba is still being awaited. But so far, I will say the exercise has gone reasonably well. Very, very well. I am quite satisfied. Losing my polling unit is not the issue. I'm happy that the choice of the people prevailed in the end.
In addition to some of those other areas that you mentioned, because they also talked about Giwa and Igabi, they said that about 18 machines were snatched in those areas. And because, this EVM, it's going to be under scrutiny as to whether or not it's something the country can adopt on a wider scale. So they'll look at all those little challenges with a view to improving on those areas. So how do we, if we were to try this at a larger scale, how do we go against those cases where thuggery, snatching of those voting machines can be avoided?
Well, there is little you can do to avoid thugs snatching voting machines, but you know, these voting machines are programmed to be disconnected remotely by CCOM, by the Electoral Commission. So once you snatch the voting machines and CCOM is reported to CCOM, they can, from their offices in Kaduna, disconnect it. So it's of no use to you. Of course, we'll lose the voting machine if it is destroyed, but the voting machine also provides its GPS location so you can target and go and recover it. Now, what do we do to make it better, to make it foolproof? One of the issues we had in 2018 and even here in 2023 is that INEC refused to give us the card reader. That's what led to the multiple voting in 2018. Now we have integrated the barcode of the electronic voting machine into the software of the the barcode of the voter's card into the software of the voting machine. So it is your card that activates the voting machine for you to vote. Now, if INEC would give us the source code for the card reader so that we integrate the card reader into the electronic voting machine, then accreditation will not even be necessary. If you come to a polling unit, you use your fingerprints to activate, to confirm that your voter's card is yours, and then the machine will open and you will vote. Then we can use the elections nationally. But in 2018, the chairman of INEC said that they couldn't risk giving us voting machine, the card reader, because they had some by-elections around the corner. This time we didn't even try because we could see that INEC didn't want to give us the smart card reader. But if the smart card reader can be integrated into the voting machine, so there are not two separate processes, but one, you come to your polling unit, the voting machine already has the details of all the voters in that polling unit. Then it is your fingerprints, your biometrics that will identify you and confirm that it's your polling unit. Then the machine will open, you will vote only once, and you go. And if you go to another polling unit and try to use the voter's card, it will be rejected because the software will not recognize your voter's card as being for that polling unit. I think that's the way to make the system foolproof. And it can be done. It's a software modification issue and hardware insertion issue, and it can be done. We've talked to the Chinese manufacturers, and they are the same manufacturers that did the smart card reader, but they said that they can't give us the source code because they have an agreement with INEC not to release it to anyone. But if INEC is to adopt these electronic voting machines in Kaduna and integrate the card reader into the voting machine and throw away the standalone card readers, then we are on our way to having near perfect elections in the country.
You know, some of the issues that they also raised on ground, because I mean there were images that did circulate, they were speaking in local language about those allegations of pre-programming or machine tampering. They, in some of those clips, said that while they imputed the political party they wanted to vote for, rather than starting from 1, because they were the first people to get there, some start counting from 118. So they didn't understand that kind of logic.
No, that is totally false, because the machine doesn't show you what it is counting. It doesn't show you how many votes have been cast until the votes have all been concluded and tallied. And all the party agents are there to not only look at the results printed by the electronic voting machine, but also if there is any argument, the physical ballots which the machine prints after you vote can be counted to cross-check. So all those are allegations of the PDP, because you know the PDP mindset is always to cheat. It's always to find a way to win, whether the people want to vote for them or not. So they have all these conspiracy theories. But we are not like that. Look, if we wanted to be like others and write the results and say that we won in every ward, we won in every polling unit, as others do by the ruling party, we would have done it. But clearly, we are interested in seeing that people's choices prevail. Now, if a party, if people decide not to vote for the APC and choose another party, they have 3 years to change their mind. People should be allowed to make their mistakes and learn to correct them in the next election cycle. We don't want to win everywhere. It is not reasonable to win everywhere. And we are quite happy to live with the choice of the people. I've made it clear, Chamberlain, to even our own people who said, let's win everywhere, let's prepare for 2020. I said, no, we will not do that. We will allow the people to choose and will allow them to correct their mistakes in the next election cycle. I went to the Commissioner of Police, for instance, when I got information that some of our people and PDP people are trying to compromise the security agencies to help them cheat in the elections. I went incognito to the Commissioner of Police on Thursday and told him that he should consider posting out all the DPOs from their current locations, because some of them have already made arrangements with politicians on both, in both the APC and PDP, to try to find a way to manipulate these voting machines. And I requested the CP to post all the DPOs on Friday so that, they will wake up on Saturday and there are new DPOs, new policemen. And we brought policemen from other states that are not used to the terrain to come and police these elections, because we wanted free and fair elections. For us, that's what matters. It is not winning. It is getting the people's will to prevail, because that is what will build our democracy. That is what will give people the confidence to come out and vote in elections. Our voter turnouts are very low, 30%, 40% across the country. In these local government elections, the voter turnout was even lower. In my polling unit, with nearly 900 voters, only about 100 something voters came out to vote. So, there is still apathy towards elections because people don't believe that these elections matter. But I am confident that with the results of the elections and with people having more confidence, we'll get better. And, SECOM will now have the next 2-3 years to take these machines round and make people more familiar with them, because some people are afraid of technology. They don't know that this machine is as simple as operating your phone. So there is a lot of advocacy and sensitization that is needed on our part. But I believe very, very strongly that the time has come for us to consider this on a nationwide scale. And there are enough safeguards, because this machine sends the results not only to the server, it prints the results at the polling unit where all the agents sign. The copy of the results is also backed up on a USB, so it's physically carried, so that even if you hack the server and change the results, you cannot hack into the USB. So there are multiple guarantees to ensure that the results are not changed, and a lot of this can be used as evidence in the tribunal, even if people successfully change one result or another. So we thought about this, and I want to commend our Independent Electoral Commission, our chairman, Dr. Saratu Diko, and her team for an excellent job. By the way, Dr. Saratu Diko was my A-level chemistry teacher. She taught me. So we went out of our way to get people that even we cannot influence. I cannot call Dr. Saratu and say, do this, because she was my teacher at A-levels. So, these are the sort of people we have in our electoral commission, people that are non-partisan, don't care who wins, but are only interested in election integrity. This is about election integrity, Chamberlain, and we are very proud of the work that SECOM has done. And we're very pleased with the outcome, even if we lost in a few places. It's okay. It's okay to lose.
Politicians, both PDP and APC, they usually tell us that, look, in fact, we had a senator who did tell us on the program that in one of the Southwest elections that the APC, they had to do certain things about vote buying when they saw what the opposition was doing. So both parties usually accuse themselves of rigging or wanting to rig elections. But about those areas that elections were postponed, I think for about 20 days or thereabout, why 20 days? Is there a guarantee that all the security challenges will be sorted out in 20 days for those elections to hold?
Of course, there is no guarantee, but the security agencies were reasonably confident that because of ongoing military operations in various parts of the state, we believe that the bandits are being significantly decimated, and in 20 days or 21 days, we will be in a position to hold elections in those 4 local governments. Secondly, the police assured us that they can then deploy the bulk of the police in the state, including imports from neighboring states, to police these 4 local governments. It's easier to spread your resources, your entire state security assets in 4 local governments and secure them than to try to do it in 23. This is why I think CECOM took the decision to postpone in 4. We were more, from the government point of view, we recommended postponing elections in only 2 local governments, that the situation is quite bad, Birnungwada and Zango Katal. But CECOM, in their wisdom, in consultation with the security agencies, increased it to 4. Which again confirms that we don't tell them what to do. We provided the security briefings that we got, and we felt, based on our assessment by the Internal Security Affairs Ministry, that we should postpone 2, but they did 4. The police and other security agencies have assured us they will be able to provide adequate security for the 4 local governments in the next 3 weeks. But we are also reasonably assured by the military that in the next 3 weeks, banditry will be significantly decimated, not only in the 4 local governments, but across the state. That is why CECOM took that decision.
I'd like to take you back to some of the things you said earlier on, and just to say that for a lot of people seeing this election play out in Kaduna, they must have thought, this is a way to go. And I think it hit home, particularly for them, on the back of the controversy we saw at the National Assembly over electronic transmission of result or not. And you didn't miss that, I'm quite sure. So I wonder what your interpretation of, that whole debate and controversy is in the context of the fact that you've not just done this once. This is the second time that your state is conducting local council elections using electronic means. You've said that some people are perhaps afraid of technology and the rest. So on a national scale, because for a lot of people that will be the next line of conversation. So what is your interpretation of that debate around electronic transmission, whether or not we're able to do it, whether INEC should use its discretion or just stay with the traditional means of electronic or election transmission? What's your interpretation of that?
Look, people that don't understand technology are genuinely concerned about it. What you don't know, you are suspicious about. So it's understandable. Secondly, electronic technology is not foolproof. We've had elections in Kenya where the election server was hacked and the results were changed. The Supreme Court had to annul the elections. But what is the solution? The solution is what we have adopted in Kaduna. Have multiple ways of getting the results other than electronic transmission. It is true, the electronic transmission of results can be hacked and results change. But if you have it physically on USB, if you have the paper results signed by all the agents, you have the security agencies with copies of all the results, because we print at least 10 copies of these results and we give all the security agencies, we give all the party agents, and then the electronic version of the results is also in a USB that is physically carried to the collection center, in addition to what the central server has. Now, unless these 3 check and all the boxes are ticked, you reject the result. I think that will provide enough guarantees against the fears that electronic transmission of results will lead to tampering. There are 2 aspects to this electronic voting, Kaidi. The first is the voting process itself. That we have shown can be foolproof. And as I said, if the improvements we suggested, which is to integrate the smart card reader and biometrics into the machine, are effected, then the machine becomes almost nearly impossible to manipulate. That's one. Secondly, the second aspect of it is once the voting is done and the results are then collated, How do they get to the server? The fear is the electronic transmission, which can be hacked. But you can introduce the two backups that we have in Kaduna: physical results signed by all the agents with copies to security agencies, and then the physical results in electronic form in a USB that can then deliver to the collation center and checked. And unless the three all tally, then the results for that polling unit or that ward are cancelled. And if you embed that into the law, so that's the evidence that can be tendered before a tribunal, then it will take care of everything. I think just as technology has its risks, technology also has the solutions. If we use our brains, and there are enough brains in Nigeria to be able to do this. So I think we have enough time to work on this, and we are very happy to share our experiences with INEC. And indeed, INEC sent a team to monitor what we did in 2018, and they also sent a team this year. So I think it's something they're thinking about. And I think the National Assembly should take a second look at the provisions regarding the use of technology in elections. It's not just, people are concerned about electronic transmission, but that's just one aspect of the challenge, which as I explained, can be resolved. The other aspect is to have the voting done electronically in a way that is simple, that anybody that can use a phone can vote and can be reasonably sure that his vote will count.
No, for a number of people, they say the fear is not exactly with INEC, that INEC seems to have been quite bold and, in its bid to want to incorporate more electronic voting into its system, or aspects of technology into the voting system. However, it would seem that it keeps meeting with some cogs in the wheel of progress, so to speak. And we saw what happened on the floor of the National Assembly. The worrying part of it was that the fear was along partisan lines. Those who were afraid of the deployment of technology or more technology, voted along party lines. So those who were not in the APC voted mostly for electronic transmission, and those in the APC seem to have mighty fears about the incorporation of technology. Can you speak to us about the thinking? I don't know whether this is something that is along party lines, and whether there needs to be a lot more convincing within your party about the acceptance of technology in elections.
Yes, I think there is need for a lot of advocacy. As I said, I think it is the reason why you saw the voting along partisan lines is because incumbents want to protect what they have. And if you're the incumbent, you want the status quo to remain, because you think this is the system and this is the system that is likely to return you back to office. So this is why you saw it. I don't think APC has a position against electronic voting. I would know if the party has such a position, and I would not have been allowed to implement it in my state if there was any party position on the matter. I think people took individual decisions. I don't think it's a party position. But having said that, I think with the success in Kaduna, and the success, I would say, is almost total, as I have explained, we are going to do a bit more in explaining this, and I will personally take this up with Mr. President and the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, and try to get more advocacy. I think the issue is for people to understand that this system is foolproof, nearly foolproof. Once they are reasonably,
it's interesting that you say it's foolproof, because I mean, when you look at what happened in Kaduna, and I do not know if you have further comment on whether or not you think that perhaps your position, because when you were talking about attempts to rig the elections, I mean, people trying to bribe police officers, for instance, or bribe electoral officers, for instance. I mean, you did say that this was happening in both APC and PDP. I do not know, because the results have come out for your local government, and the chairman in your local government now, we understand, is now of the opposition party. So if these are some of the results that could come out, I mean, in free and fair elections, and I don't know whether you have further comment on whether the elections that happened were free and fair in Kaduna State. If these are the results, do you think that any party and incumbents who willingly, adopt this method, seeing the results that have been thrown up in your state?
Look, first of all, let me correct you. The chairman of Kaduna North local government, my local government, is APC. He won, okay? He lost some councillors because councillorship elections are very, very personal elections. People know who they are voting for. And people were not happy with the councillors in the first term, so they voted against them, even if they are APC in the second term. That's what happened. It is not that, but overall, the chairman of Kaduna North local government is APC. So you've got your information wrong. Yes, I lost my polling unit. Yes, the councillor in my ward is PDP. But that's okay, because the councillor that was in the first term was APC. I don't think the people liked him very much. So they voted against him. They voted against the individual, not really against the party. But they gave more votes to the chairmanship candidate than they did to the councillor, because they know the councillor, they see him every day. The chairman is a bit more remote. And of course, the governor is very far remote. So those that are saying that this is a referendum on me got it wrong. I am not on the ballot. Okay, so we won in Kaduna North local government. As I said, from the 15 local governments so far announced, APC has won 14. PDP has won 1 in Kaura in southern Kaduna. Even the heart of southern Kaduna opposition, Jema'a local government, where PDP has won consistently since 1999, this time flipped to APC. Okay, so it is not about incumbent or anything. It is about commitment to democracy and giving people their choice. So I think whether you are an incumbent or not, you should put the interests of democracy and public interest ahead and allow free and fair elections. I would say the elections in Kaduna, using the electronic voting machines, electronic transmission, and the multiple backups, have been very successful. The reason why people will try to compromise policemen and all that is because that's the system they are used to. But truly, the police cannot do anything to change the results of the election. They can't touch the machine. They can't do anything about the machine. If anything is done to manipulate the machine, as I said, SECOM, our electoral commission, can switch it off and cancel the results for that polling unit. And will be able to use GPS to track where the machine is and recover the machine, and then schedule a date for another election in that polling unit. And indeed, in several local governments, we're going to do by-elections in some polling units where the machines either malfunctioned or were snatched or were stolen or whatever. So, as I said, the system is nearly foolproof. You cannot manipulate it. Whether you use security agencies or electoral officials, you cannot really change anything, because you can't change the results in the machine. You can't change the results in the USB that will be taken to the collation center. You cannot change the results of that are printed and signed by all the party agents and giving copies to the security agencies. So unless you can change all three, hack into the server, change it, hack into the USB somehow and change it, and also rewrite all the results that are with the security agencies and the parties, you really cannot win in this thing. You may succeed in cheating initially, but by the time all the facts go before an election tribunal, you lose. So it's nearly foolproof. And if we can make all the lawmakers in the National Assembly understand this, and they are confident they were duly elected, they didn't write results in the last election that brought them to the National Assembly, they would have nothing to fear. The only person that will fear this system is the person who knew he was not elected, that he used the security agencies and INEC to somehow manipulate the results that brought him to the National Assembly or to the governor's office or the presidency. This is my view.
Okay, sorry about the mix-up for the chairmanship results. I think that might be what is making the round, but I think that needs to be corrected immediately, that it was the councillorship results. The focus I was trying to make is the fact that if, assuming the APC were to lose more seats, do you think that it will be convincing, for instance, to your party members that this will be the way to go? Nonetheless, I mean, this is not the first time that Kaduna State has introduced this electronic voting, and looking at the fact that you did this in 2018 and now in 2021, you're also deploying this again, yet voter turnout is still low, confidence is still low. What do you think it would take for the confidence of the people in the voting process to come back full blast? Because some people will be extremely worried at the number of people who have registered versus the number of people who are actually coming out to vote.
Yes, voter turnout is a major concern, and there are perhaps 2 or 3 reasons for this. The first is that because we had to do modifications to the voting machines, they arrived a little late. We didn't have months to prepare people and show how the machine works extensively, so that people have confidence that even though I am not educated, even though I have not seen how the machine is, I will still be able to vote. So there was the fear of technology even on the part of voters, and I think it contributed to the apathy. And this is why I said earlier that we intend to use the next 2-3 years, to try to get more people, to participate. Secondly, local government elections usually have lower turnout because, unlike national elections where the entire populace is mobilized, local government elections are isolated elections in one state. So there is that issue. We've seen that. We've also seen that with by-elections. Whenever you have an out-of-season election, voter turnouts tend to be low. We need to have more and more advocacy on the use of the machines. And the third thing, I think, for me, which is a very positive thing, is the fact that, for instance, in Kaduna North local government, even though APC won the chairmanship, we lost more than half of the councillors, because the councillors that served in the last 3 years were returned by the party using consensus, and many people were not happy with that. So they voted against them. They didn't vote for PDP. They voted against the councillorship candidates, and we lost them. Now, the result of that, I think, will send a message to the people that you vote smarter. You can vote out people you don't like. So I have a feeling next election, next local government election, will have higher confidence, higher turnout, which will also be improved by the continuous advocacy that we are going to ask SECOM to do for the next 2-3 years. They shouldn't wait until election cycles to show people how these machines work. They should use the 2-year period before the elections to really show people that these machines are easy to use. Go village by village, ward by ward, local government by local government, go to the market on market days and show people that this machine is easy to use. You can do it. You use your phone, you can use this machine. This is how to improve the voter turnout. But as I said, the loss of APC, of many councilorships, even when we won the chairmanship, it's a clear indication to people that, yes, our votes matter. So let us come out next time and vote out the people we don't like. So I think it will work generally in future elections. But a lot of advocacy and explanation is necessary. A lot of communication and PR is needed.
That will really be interesting to see that play out, because I know that lots of people who looked forward to National Assembly following the same path will be, I imagine, very excited about some of these perspectives. But let's talk about security, because that's an area that you have equally taken some measures and adopted certain strategies. But given the kind of results and what is still going on, do you feel hamstrung by the security architecture as it currently exists?
Yes, it can be very frustrating sometimes because as state governor, I'm supposed to be the chief security officer of the state, but as I explained several times, the state governments control no security assets at all. These are federal security assets. And while they cooperate with us, they collaborate with us to some extent, at the end of the day, they take their orders from Abuja. And there are some things that we want done that, are not done. We have been meeting as governors of 8 frontline states, and we have very clear strategies and plans to end this banditry. But the constraints on the federal side sometimes slow us down. But we are working together more collaboratively, and I think we have turned the corner. I think the issue of banditry in the Northwest is at a tipping point, and we're going to see the end of it by the grace of God, because the aggressive military and police operations on the air and on the ground, are gradually and significantly decimating banditry. And I think we are coming to the end of it by the grace of God. But yes, we can be hamstrung sometimes. It can be frustrating sometimes. We have our own ideas, and sometimes the military and the police, are willing to implement some of our ideas. We are training our vigilantes, for instance, to use that to increase the footprint of the security agencies. Because one of the things that we must realize is that we have too few policemen, we have too few soldiers, airmen and women, and naval officers. Our military is too small. Our police is too small in size and footprint to confront the challenges that we are facing in almost every part of the country. So they are overstretched, and we understand that, and this is why we are training thousands of vigilantes, and we've agreed with the security agencies to arm them so that they work collaboratively with them to increase the number of the number of people to face and end this banditry once and for all. So we are optimistic that we are at a tipping point.
You know, almost all governors we've spoken with, I mean, on this platform have said the same thing about, I mean, just being chief security officers on paper and not in reality. And then when we speak to security experts, they tell you that, well, it's sometimes convenient for governors to say that, but during elections, you see how they find a way around, you know, putting up those security architecture or assets to sort of favor them during elections. And I recall earlier on during this conversation, you told us how you sort of prevailed on the CP on how to deploy manpower strategically. So, I mean, at least to that extent, you had a say in the security architecture for the election. So how is it hard to translate that, what you did, kind of success you achieved during the elections, to other areas?
Okay, look, first of all, you know, asking the DPO, asking the CP to deploy DPOs is administrative. And even that, you know, if the Inspector General of Police was hostile to me or to my government, he can, the CP will call the IG, and IG will say, don't do it. And that's the end of the matter, okay? My influence on the CP is soft power. I went to him and I said, please, this is what I think you should do, because I don't trust our politicians on both sides. You know, they will try to use the security agencies one way or the other. So it's an entirely different thing than to go to the CP and say, I want you to deploy mobile policemen to go into the bush and kill bandits. These are two different things. This is a normal election duty. There are very few risks involved. This one requires operational deployment, which the CP cannot do unless he calls his zonal AIG and calls the Inspector General of Police. This is how it works. And those that say that, you know, during elections or when it is convenient, governors use the security agencies, forget that many incumbent governors in the 2019 elections lost elections. The governor of Adam, my friend Bindo, lost elections. If he was in a position to use security agencies to win, how did he lose? My friend, the governor of Bauchi, former governor of Bauchi, M.A. Abubakar, lost elections. So people like to pick and choose and point at governors because, you know, governors are the least popular elected officials in the country. Because we are visible, you know, some of us live flamboyantly and all that, and we're the punch bags of the Federal Republic. But it is absolutely untrue to say that, you know, governors have absolute control of security agencies. Of course, if the governor has unlimited amounts of money, like some of the oil-producing states, you can fully control your federal police, even if you're in the opposition party. But many of us don't have those resources, you know, to buy security agencies and pocket them exclusively. And even in such cases, I assure you, there are certain things they cannot do until they get clearance from Abuja. So we're not fully and completely in control. Not in every circumstance, particularly in operational matters. We have no control. They have to clear from the high commands of the police and the military.
Well, I think it's quite worrisome for me to hear you, I mean, say that, I mean, to infer from what you have said that security at this point goes to the highest bidder, you know, referencing oil-producing states who you think can afford more, and it's quite worrisome. So what is the fate of, I mean, Kaduna is doing quite well when it comes to IGR. So what becomes of the fate of other states that are not even on that 1 to 10 list of IGR or revenue? Does that mean that they're completely helpless?
Well, I will not say they are completely helpless. I just gave you the example of how some governors are able to appropriate full security agencies fully into their pockets. But I just gave one instance. I do not believe that governors are completely helpless. I do not believe that it's all about resources. Relationships matter, and how you organize your architecture. So, but quite frankly, I think the days of relying on federation account are about gone, and we must work harder. We must work harder at the state level to be independent of federation account allocations. Every state has its own security architecture. For instance, in Kaduna State, the system we inherited with the security was under the Secretary to the State Government, who is a very busy official, cabinet secretariat, so many things. So we decided to create a Ministry of Internal Security and Home Affairs, and Gombe State, Zamfara State, many states, have gone this route, and the security management, the coordination has improved significantly in Kaduna, and I believe in other states as well. So we are not totally helpless. I'm just trying to point out our constraints as governors and how some other state governors seem to have more control over the security agency than some others. I'm not generalizing here. I'm just saying each state has its own peculiarities, and the architecture you need to improve coordination and the resourcing of security agencies needs to be tailor-made to each state and according to your resources.
Of an oil-producing state, in fact, the one that gets the most revenue, River State.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'll take this back to Chamberlain.
All right, so before we get to that, I mean, have you been able, are you still able to carry out developmental projects in the states given the security situation there?
Yes, of course. Look, this banditry is essentially a rural phenomenon. That's why initially we were calling rural banditry. It has now moved closer to urban areas, but when it started 2.5 years ago, it was essentially an urban, rural phenomenon, and but that has not affected our ability to attract investments into the state. In the last 2 years, we've attracted more than $2 billion, closer to $3 billion of foreign and domestic investment into the state. We've also engaged in massive infrastructural development across the state, everywhere. It's only in the most insecure local governments, and here I'm referring to local governments like Birnungwari, that has been afflicted with this problem for a long time, that we've had to suspend construction works of some of our roads and schools and hospitals and so on. We have done extensively, particularly in our 3 metropolitan areas, Kafanchan, Kaduna, and Zaria, to catch up on the infrastructure development, because Kaduna State has fallen behind other states in terms of infrastructure development, while we were facing population explosion and rural urban migration. But in the last few years, we have done significant investments, and we're able to get a lot done. And this is still ongoing, and this is just the foundation. And my hope is our successors will continue to build on this and do that. Another innovation that we just introduced with the help of our State House of Assembly is to create metropolitan management authorities. We do not believe that splitting a city into 3 or 4 local governments is the way to manage that city. Cities need centralized management, because garbage collection, drainage, water lines do not recognize these artificial local government boundaries. You have to manage a city as an integrated and organic unit. And this is born from my experience in managing Abuja when I was minister. So we've created by law 3 metropolitan authorities to manage Kaduna Capital Territory, Zaria Metropolitan Authority, and Kafancha Municipal Authority. And we're appointing commissioners, very much like ministers of FCT, to oversee the coordination and the centralized management of these urban areas, and also to ensure that the billions of naira we invested in upgraded infrastructure in these 3 metropolitan areas are managed. So we have invested significantly in infrastructure and put in place a method of maintaining and continuing this infrastructure development. and we're very happy with it. Very soon we'll announce who the commissioners are that will manage these territories, and they will work with the local governments. The local government councils will still be in charge of issues like education and so on. But the management of the city itself, garbage collection, urban development, urban management, transportation, emergency services will all be under these administrators of the territories that will be commissioners of cabinet rank.
Final note, still on development. I mean, education is vital to development, right? And I was trying to say earlier that, in fact, your colleague, the governor of Rivers State, which is an oil-producing state, has said the same thing, that they're just chief security officers on paper, just like you said. So there will be questions around which of the oil-producing states are you referring to, because he has said clearly that he does not have the power, and he has referenced some examples. But about education, on a final note, we saw wives of northern governors speaking about, schools cannot remain perpetually closed. So what is the plan, really? If you could just wind down on that one.
Yeah, education is the most important asset you invest in any child. I am the product of education. I am not the son of anybody, but today I'm governor because I got educated. And I got educated in public schools. This is why we were very, 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 very focused on ensuring the revival of the quality of public education. We've invested significantly in education in the last few years. We have taken the unprecedented step of sacking 22,000 teachers and hiring 25,000 qualified teachers to improve the quality of education. And we are investing aggressively there. Now, the North has always been behind in education. We've been continuously an education disadvantaged region right from independence. Even though we've been giving preferences, JAM scores and all that, that has not helped. In fact, it has made our people lazy. So I'm against this differential JAM and differential FGC scores. I think people should be encouraged to work harder and compete. And we are preparing our children in Kaduna State to be competitive, not only in Nigeria, but globally. We are giving them the best possible education. We are investing heavily in them. We are investing heavily in teacher development. And the schools are closed now because on the advice of the security agency, they need a couple of months to undertake massive security operations. They are doing that. We are confident that from the next 2 weeks, we will start gradually opening of schools. We have moved many of our boarding students in rural areas that we are not sure we can protect to urban schools, thereby increasing the congestion in urban schools that we know we can protect. That they have been taking their exams, but the Ministry of Education just brought a proposal for the gradual reopening of our schools. We know that the education is the most important thing that we have to do, and we are backwards. The continuous closure of schools is exactly what the bandits and Boko Haram wants, and we're not going to let them win. But we must put the safety of children and our teachers first, and we're working on that. But as I said, because of the massive security operations going on, the situation is improving. It is not reflected in the newspaper headlines, but I receive the security reports every day, and I know things are improving. And we already have a proposal, and we'll begin the gradual reopening of our schools, and we are going to enhance the protection and safety of our schools by the time they are all fully reopened. We are working on that. We are conscious of responsibility, and we are going to catch up on the curriculum. We will not lose anything by the special grace of God. Education is key, and the North must stand up and work harder to catch up and be competitive, not only with the rest of Nigeria, but with the rest of the world.
Well, Your Excellency, we'll really appreciate it if you can answer this next question in 30 seconds, because we really have to go. And I don't think you've had time to speak on this matter ever since. It's about the emir, because they said that he was not part of those in consideration at the time, but you brought him in because he was your relative, and Zara people say they are not happy. So why did you do that?
Look, the law enables the governor to pick any of the princes as emir, and that's what we did. We looked at the history of Zazzau Emirate. We took into account the fact that this ruling house has not had an emir for 100 years, and the ruling house has not had an emir for 138 years. and we took all that into account, and we made our choice. And the people saying that Zaria people are not happy, they are a minority. This emir is extremely popular. He's very, very popular. Recently, we conducted a poll from before the local government elections to know where we are, and the emir of Zazzau is massively popular, and he's doing very well. The disgruntled elements will say that they don't like it, but you know, that's how it is. I am from Zaria, so everyone is my relative, but that's not the point. This guy has been has had a successful career in the private sector, in the public sector, ambassador. In my view, he was the most qualified to be emir, and he was qualified, and I've appointed him. I have no apologies.
We need to then anchor at that point. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us this morning. We've been speaking with His Excellency Nasir El-Rufai, Governor of Kaduna State.
Thank you for having me.
We're back in a moment.
Well, when the president did say that indeed there was going to be a refund to state over debiting them for Paris Club debt, and that they were to get a relief and a refund, you know, there was a lot of cries of hallelujah. However, now it's turned out that there was some consultation that happened in the process of getting that particular refund, and it turned out that there was also going to be some payments to be made in terms of consultancy. That raised some controversy amongst governors who said the amounts were highly debatable, and even the people who were supposed to have been given the work, you know, there were huge question marks around there, because this is a Paris debt club refund that happened over a period of how many years? I mean, this happened in the Paris Club debt was paid during the Obasanjo era, but the relief came during, as the refund came during the era of President Muhammadu Buhari. So you can imagine how many years we're talking about here. What has now happened is that the federal government has recognized the promissory notes, or has given the people who were said to have, you know, done this consultancy promissory notes to them to a tune of about $418 million, and that seems to be causing a lot of controversy within amongst governors who are saying that it would seem that the federal government has been misled. However, we have two gentlemen here in the studio to help shed light into what exactly transpired. How did this figure come about, $418 million? What was the work that was done? What was the level of consultancy? And whether or not they should actually be getting these monies, whether the monies which has been promised them now by the federal government is actually due them. We have with us this morning Mr. George Ubo, who is one of the judgment creditor, and we also have with us Mr. Chris Wakobia, who is the convener of Country First Movement. Gentlemen, you're welcome. Well, Mr. George Ubo is also the CEO of Panic Alert Security Systems. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Good morning, madam.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, I don't know, it was a pretty complicated, let's say, history to be tracing back, but we all remember the Paris Club debt, which President Obasanjo, you know, was able to secure, and that, you know, a lot of states were debited. I think the monies were debited from the federation account and paid back. But it turned out that a number of states were over debited. Now we are hearing that there is some controversy over the process that happened in trying to get the funds back to the state. You are one of the creditors. Can you tell us what exactly is causing controversy?
Okay. Well, first, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, my fellow Nigerians. I would plead with everyone to dispel any preconceived notion or narrative and listen without prejudice, because I'm in the thick of things. This is a democracy. Any democracy stands on a tripod. 3 co-equal branches, judiciary, executive, and legislative. Yes, the consultants involved when the payments were dragging and went to court. And all of them got final court orders.
The consultants involved in what precisely?
Okay, very good. The consultants performed my right of duties. In the case of Ned Nwoko, you cannot have the governor, the states, the governors getting their money without Ned's job, because it's part of the consultancy I did. He, in his wisdom, found out that there were illegal deductions. So his company, his firm, Linus, took federal government to court. So he was the one that actually got the 3.1 billion US dollars, the entire judgment. And his consultancy is 20%. Now, my consultancy was to look into this whole thing.
He was the one who found out that the state had been over.
Yeah, not only finding out,
debited.
he had to go to court. I mean, it was a protracted, he went to court, litigated it. Judgment came down December 2013. I was engaged June 2014 to even look into the judgment, the propriety of the judgment. And I found some shenanigans.
Engaged by who?
By the Nigerian Governors Forum. I have all the documents here to, I'll leave it with you. And when I looked into the judgment, of course, the issue of the 20%, that he did a very good job, and it was clear he was giving consultancy to be paid 20%. I found out that 15% of the $3.1 billion judgment was awarded to a company that was not really party to the suit. You don't need to be an attorney to comprehend that. You can't come during the judgment phase to benefit when you were not a party, to the suit. And that it was very difficult for me, because the fellow, may so rest in peace, was Captain Hosa, Wells Procurement. And my security company was actually securing his home too. So there was this ambivalence. And he was livid initially, but this whole thing, even the judge involved, the judgment awarded the 15%. The Ganishi Nisi, the same thing. It was Ganishi absolute after Buhari came on board. I mean, the fear of, and of course the pressure we put on the judge too. So the judge reversed that $478 million judgment. So that money was not paid by, it was not deducted again, so that was saved because the judge reversed it. Now, after all that, some covert job, I won't get into I will talk about the overt operations, I won't get into, the judge was, arrested and all that. But the point is, when I approached, I'm talking for me now, when I approached the Governors Forum to pay me my money, there was this whole, normal, whatever. So I took them to court. But before I took them, while the matter was pending, during the pendency of the court action, in November 2018, the same Governors Forum wrote the Attorney General to pay me the 10% for the $7.8 million that I demanded. Now, I called the Attorney General December 2018. He was in Malaysia. He was very hard on me. He said, look, I'm not going to touch this. What is the situation with your case? I said, I'm in court. He said, until you finish the court issue, you should know better. I'm not going to touch it. So in April 2019, 2 days after my birthday is April 6th, on April 8th, the same Governors Forum, we entered into a consent judgment. Again, you don't need to be an attorney to know that when two parties that are fighting in court decide to consent to a judgment, and some of these judgments involved in this case are consent judgments too. So when they consented, then the issue was now ripe for the Attorney General to look into. Even then, the Attorney General's office still wrote the Governors Forum to reconfirm this whole process, the letter they wrote, November 28th letter they wrote and everything. So, if anything, the Attorney General has been way above board. And the President's, of course, the whole thing that the President is not obeying court orders and all that, he in his own wisdom too felt, hey, all court judgment, because of course, the PNID thing, let the federal government settle at this stage. Because when you have a court judgment and the Attorney General's letter, I think the July 12th letter, he mentioned it, the cost is far outweigh any benefit if you keep dragging this thing on.
You know, it is interesting that you mentioned the PNID judgment,
Yeah.
you know, which has caused
exactly.
a lot
So
of
it's good to
controversy.
resolve it
and
earlier
you know,
than make it a protracted thing. That is what people don't understand. Now, once you have a final court judgment, and these same governors forum, look, they were there when we were in court. They consented to it. So, like in my case, what are you going to fault me for?
So what I'm trying to understand, and
Right.
I don't think I understand very clearly,
Right.
is first and foremost, I mean, what were you engaged for? You say that Mr. Ned Nwoko went to court on behalf of the Nigeria Governors Forum. Oh, he was the lawyer for the Nigeria. Is that what you're saying? He was the lawyer for the Nigeria Governors Forum. Is that what you're saying?
See, he challenged the legal deduction, the particular deduction from...
On behalf of who?
On behalf of the local government. And by extension, of course, the governors.
Was he engaged by Algon?
I just said it. He was engaged by Algon. 20% consultancy.
Okay.
No upfront fee, but once you're successful, you get 20%. And
Okay, so he was engaged by Algon.
Right.
He went on behalf of the local governments, but not the governors.
Well, this is the Secretary General of Algon that signed his engagement letter. So it's Algon, and by extension, you know, Algon, local governments, you know, the state governments.
Well, I mean, the inference now is
but the local, Algon engaged him.
Okay.
Okay. Nigerian Governors Forum engaged me. But I think what you were asking is the work done. Or are you talking about the propriety of the engagement?
No, I'm talking about the work done. What was I'm
so
wondering why there will be a judgment and then, you know, you'll be invited to look through the judgment again, to review the judgment.
Well, if the judgment, you can't question anybody's engagement to do anything, you know, because that will go into areas that I mean, what are you questioning? The Governors Forum, Nigerian Governors Forum, felt they should engage me, an anti-corruption crusader, to look into this job. I found fraud in it, which I just mentioned to you, because 15% of the $3.1 billion judgment was awarded to a contractor who was not party to the suit. I still looked into Ned Nwoko's issue. I found, you know, there was nothing wrong there, and my report cleared him, you know, to be paid.
Indeed.
You know, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this, Chris. This is what came out to the public. I mean,
right.
A lot of the headlines, I think the biggest one we saw was on the part of Premium Times and a few other newspapers. Yes.
This day inclusive.
Indeed. And they had this one, you know, Buhari ignores governor's call for audits, because we've seen the governors asking for a forensic audit, approves payment of $418 million, suspicious debt. That's how they've tagged it.
But the same President Buhari approved money for the governors in 2016, if you recall. He approved it is over $86 million and over 17 billion naira.
In bailout?
Hold on. You see...
No, I have to clarify.
The governors are saying that...
I want to clarify if it's the bailout funds.
Yeah, it's the same fund. The governors are saying that...
If you're referring to the bailout funds, let me quickly come... We'll come to the bailout funds. Let him quickly intervene.
Mokwe, my intervention will be predicated on two fundamental quotes of my mentor, Martin Luther King Jr. He said that an individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic demands to the broader concerns of humanity. And then he went further to say that true compassion is not in tossing a coin at the beggar, but ensuring that the edifiers that churns out beggars will pull down. I want to say clearly that did some people do jobs for the Governors Forum and then by extension the local governments and the likes? Did they do jobs? Yes, jobs were done. Do they deserve some payment? Yes, perhaps. But what the governors are saying is that at this point in our national life, you must audit. We're talking about NDDC and forensic audit. And you saw how about 6 trillion naira has been fleeced by certain contractors and consultants. I am here because, like my brother, I care about our country. If he was one of the consultants, and then my brother Ned Nwoko was one of the other consultants, and they did certain things for government. Mokwe, you remember the Pentascope deal and judgments gotten against the federal government of Nigeria? They got judgments. But when the Nigerian government, and indeed the Attorney General, looked at the papers and found out that certain figures were untoward, they decided to petition the judgment and they went back to court. Now, what the governors are saying is, look at the figures, $418 million as payment to consultants. $418 million is over 100 billion naira. Mokwe, as you and I talk, resident doctors are on strike for figures far less than that. As you and I talk, ASU is asking for only about 120 billion to effectively go back to school. They are threatening a strike, perhaps from tomorrow. As you and I talk, government is looking for funds to fund infrastructure. And then a few individuals as consultants, mark my use of words, are saying that government is owing them $418 million as consultancy fee. What the governors are saying is, oh, we're not against you, but we want a forensic audit. And then the local governments, as it were, that were said to have engaged these consultants are saying that, oh, this is not just about, there are certain contracts that were supposed to have been executed, and that some of these contracts were not executed. And so this gamut of judgment debt, that there's about $418 million, cuts across several strata of their engagement, and that they do not think that this $480 million should be paid without forensic audit. The governors are saying the same thing, Mokwe. And then in February, whilst the vice president was acting as the president of the Federal Republic and at the Council of State meeting, he said that he totally aligns with the call of the governors for an audit. And the pride of this administration is anti-corruption, due process. Now, what we are saying as a people is that rather than just jump into paying these debts, what is wrong with a forensic audit? If you're saying that with respect to other payments that Nigeria was indebted to and judgment gotten, that you can do a forensic audit, why are people uncomfortable with the call for a forensic audit? At this point in our country, we need money to cover a whole lot of things. And the Governors Forum, and indeed the masses of our people, are saying that simply what is needed at this point is verify, validate, interrogate this humongous figure. You don't throw $480 million into a few hands in the name of a judgment.
Now,
Why not interrogate
I'll ask
it?
Mr. Ubo very soon whether or not, he has any, misgivings with a forensic audit. But are you begrudging them? I mean, if somebody identified a loophole somewhere and, was smart enough to say, this is a potential problem. This is what I can potentially help you get back. And if I'm able to, you don't even have to pay me. If I'm able to help you get it, you will give me this much percentage. Will you begrudge him, his business savvy?
Let me say this clearly. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. The way we do our things here, go to the United States of America, look at how these things are prorated. It is just unfortunate that we live in it. That's why I started with a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. An individual must rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic demands to the broader concerns of humanity. 20% of 1 trillion, for instance. Who does that? Where does that happen?
The question should be who agreed to it.
If those who agreed,
yes.
If those who agreed to it are saying that they need to have a forensic audit to know what level of job was done, what is wrong with that? That's exactly what nobody's saying, oh, you didn't do any job. What they're saying is $418 million is too large for what jobs you did. And I'll give you an instance. When Nigeria was taken to court over the Pentascope deal, certain monies were approved in the United Kingdom. And then what happened? The Nigerian government under this present administration said, oh no, this is humongous, we can't do that. And they went back to court. What the governors are simply saying is, oh, we're not opposed to, we're not saying you didn't do anything at all. What they're saying is $418 million at this point to a few hands, we need a forensic audit. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Well, I'll come back to you shortly, but, this is the call that the governors have made. And that's what they were still dealing with until we now heard that, oh, the Federal Ministry of Finance has handed the judgment creditors promissory notes. First and foremost, do you have promissory notes from the federal government?
I won't answer that. Let me go into what my dear
Why
brother
won't you
here
answer
said.
that?
No, I mean, I won't answer that. Let me go into what
So I'll take that as a yes.
I have not been handed promissory notice in the process. If I have, it would have been reported. All they are saying is that the process is in place. But the point is, my dear brother here, I don't want this to be like it's something based on sentiment. You hit the nail on the head. The governor, Algon engaged Ned Nwoko. The governors should be kissing Ned on both cheeks. Because without him going to court, he wouldn't have even had the money in the first place. So why would you now have a problem paying him? You have been paying him before. This is not the first payment he's getting. So why are we shifting the goalposts? In my case, regardless of what anybody thinks of what I did, nobody can indict me on anything because an engagement letter was given to me. The same party that gave the organization that gave me engagement letter wrote a letter to the Attorney General to pay me. Attorney General, they didn't want it. He even wrote back and said, hey, reconfirm again. Then I have a consent judgment that they consented to. So what is the big deal?
So first and foremost,
So
I'll ask
if
you
you
this.
after consenting to these facts,
I'll ask you this.
Right.
One, are you afraid of a forensic audit?
No, you see, you don't, after getting judgment, you now come back again. You see, you need to understand how things work. Just like the Attorney General said, am I going to sit down after I've gotten judgment, after the necessary tools have been put in place, the President has approved, Chief of Staff, the Minister of Finance, DMO, Attorney General have all put their hands on paper to pay me, then if you delay, then there are going to be costs involved. More money is going to balloon. So the point is, why didn't they do this forensic before? You were in court with me, you settled out, you consented to a judgment with me. The governors are probating and reprobating. You understand?
Well,
so
the governors have also maintained, especially under the Nigeria Governors Forum, that
right.
There was no time at any point in time when the Nigeria Governors Forum engaged you to do this job on behalf of them.
Okay, fine. If that is their position verbally, the document speaks to the contrary. And if there is no document to that and they consented to it in court, see, this thing is becoming moronic because you are saying one thing and you have done a different thing. You consented, I went to court as your consultant. You never posited in court that I'm not your consultant. What you did was to consent to a judgment. So are you saying that the governors' firm don't have a legal department or lawyers that represented?
Let me use the timeline that you gave. I think you said you were engaged by the Nigeria Governors Forum sometime in 2014.
Yeah, everything is. I'll drop it for you.
Is that correct?
Right.
That was also about the same time that there was some controversy within the Nigeria Governors Forum, and it was factionalized. Do you remember?
Yeah, I'm very much. It's the junk faction that engaged me. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
So it is a faction of the Nigeria Governors Forum that engaged you at the point when they were in a crisis.
Sure.
So if that is the situation, can we really say that it was the Nigeria Governors Forum that sits today that engaged you?
See, we don't want to get into these technicalities because when I was doing job for them, there was no issue of a factional or I don't know the word, the crystal. The Governors Forum engaged me. They benefited from my services. When they now sanitized the Governors Forum, was when I made my demand to the person that signed my, the faction you had, the Okaro, you had Naiwu. And when I made my demand, they had come together anyway, and they looked at it. Even the letter, the November 28, 2018 letter Okaro signed to Malami to pay me, he did mention that it was a junk faction that engaged me, but he didn't use that as a dispositive statement that I shouldn't be paid. So when you acquiesce to all these facts, I mean, he mentioned in passing, but he still recommended that I be paid. Then we went to court. He consented to judgment. We signed TOS, terms of settlement, consented to judgment. Even after that, the ministry, the Attorney General's office wrote him, Dayo Akpata wrote him again, please reconfirm the November 28 letter. He reconfirmed and said, we don't, based on the terms of settlement, the consent judgment, we are recommending him for payment.
Well, you're saying that there are documents to the effect that you were recommended for payment
Yeah.
by all the totality of the Nigerian
Yes,
Governors
the
Forum.
recommendation came in 2019. That is all of the, everything I'm talking about is, the engagement was 2014. They wrote a letter 2018 when they all came together November, entered into a consent judgment April 2019. December 2019, Solicitor General wrote for Attorney General's office for them to reconfirm. 2019 December. 2010 January 10, the Governors Forum again wrote and said, we have no problem, no objection, we are recommending him for payment. Based on that, the Attorney General wrote, I think, the May 14 letter to the Minister of Finance before he wrote the August one. So, look, when people that are dispassionate look into this matter, both the President, the Chief of Staff Gambari, Attorney General Malami, Minister of Finance Ahmed, DMO I think is her name.
Devts Management Office.
Yeah, of the DG. All of them will come out smelling like roses, because if anything, this matter went through the crucibles of due process. Final, if as we speak, as the Attorney General recognized, there is any court order invalidating then they have a case.
Well, some people will say that, we don't know how this matter is going to be resolved. I mean, this is now out in the public.
I'm leaving all this with you.
Okay, we do not know whether or not, I mean, the promissory notice, which he says they're in the process of getting now, is going to materialize into payment, or whether or not the federal government is going to, undertake the forensic audit. But what lessons can we learn? Because it would seem that right now the governors are crying over spilt milk, and this is not the first time we're saying it. I mean, Nigerians are also wondering what sort of consultants, and they're not begrudging the work that you've done, but then there'll be huge questions as to what sort of work it is. People, of course, will either be looking to learn from you,
exactly,
or they'll be looking to question their government in terms of, are they getting careless? Or because this is the time, as he rightly pointed out, where we're looking for funds to do all manner of things, and it would seem that the federal government and the states, especially the states, are cash-strapped. What lessons do you think we can learn?
Cash-strapped, but this matter involves them getting money, though.
Let me say that I understand the position of my brother here, but there's something he's overlooking. Again, that takes me to John F. Kennedy. He said, my countrymen, think not what your country can do for you, but think what you can do for your country. Yes, we agree that you have done something, but here, certain individuals engaged these consultants, and the Argonne, the Association of Local Government, are saying simply that some of these claims are spurious, and so we want them reinvestigated. We want a forensic.
Oh, even
that's
Argonne,
one. Argonne is part of it, yes. Then the governors are saying, we want these claims investigated. We want a forensic. Now, what they're simply saying is not, oh, you didn't do it. They're not saying you didn't do any job. I'm not going to go to the morality of whether it was Jang faction or Amechi faction that got anybody on board. What we're saying, and indeed what is tried proper and right, is the way we've gone with NDDC, allow the forensic. If in your dealing with other companies outside Nigeria, the federal government has had to say, we won't pay these monies decreed by a United Kingdom court because we doubt the propriety or otherwise of the whole protocol. Now, what is wrong with the governors and indeed the Argonne saying, we want the forensic? I think that the time has come for us as a government to look at how things work. The Auditor General's office, the Accountant General's office, that's going directly to your question. We must check our legal protocol as to how these things happen. In other climes, you have prorated percentage for consultancy. You could just say 20% for the first 100 million, and then 1% for any extra cost on the first 100 million. That way, individuals do not fleece their country. That way, you do not come to say, oh, I got a judgment debt of 200 trillion, and my percentage is 20%. Unfortunately, if we allow that kind of situation, what we are going to have, Mokwe, is people will leave schools and begin to think about printing cards and letterheads as consultants, because that becomes a new cash cow in our nation. So what we're saying is, nobody's saying, okay, don't pay them at all. What we're saying is that the time has come for us to walk the talk about this government being concerned about anti-corruption. The time has come for us to walk the talk about due process. And the time has come for our dear president, and indeed all those who, don't forget that the vice president is a seasoned attorney. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria, and he has said that he is on all fours with the call by the governors for an audit.
Well, we'll see
I think that the time has come for us to audit this process and ensure that monies needed for other things in this country are not paid to certain individuals.
We'll see how this eventually pans out, because this is still a matter on the front burner for governors. They are still, they're still debating this amount of money. They're still calling for the forensic audit, and we also see that moves are being made on the part of the federal government to ensure that you get, because there have also been questions as to whether or not, our state respects the laws, especially when judgment has been given in terms of giving, paying people what is due them. I mean, there's also controversy. It would seem that it's a delicate balancing act.
What is right is right, Mokwe.
In terms of people getting what is due them. But let us see how matters eventually pan out. We have to thank both of you for coming. Hopefully, if we need to, you wouldn't shy away from our studios. Thank you so much for coming on this morning. Mr. George Ubo is the CEO of Panic Alert Security Systems and also a judgment creditor. And Mr. Chris Nwokobia is the convener of Country First Movement. Well, we're not going to finish before we take your mails. Let's take a few of them. Oladayo Awodele has this one on the $480 million Paris Club refund controversy. He said 20% consultancy fees is quite high. No consultant on engineering and building projects gets such. Well, that's what Oladayo is saying this morning.
Well, Henry says, talking about the Kaduna LG elections, the claim that e-voting machine can print out results, feed the server, and act as a backup for manual voting has proved that the National Assembly erred during the passage of the Electoral Bill 2020. Our selective phobia for beneficial technology confirms once again, under our development, Nigerians should resolve to confront our demons that have set us backwards and embrace true change.
Just to reference Samuel Oluwagbenga's mail on this conversation on the refund, saying that money should have been paid to Nigerians using BVNs. Anyway, but that's aside. This next one from Uzoigwe Friday on the Kaduna LG election, saying, I am happy with the disposition of the Kaduna State Governor on the recent elections in Kaduna. He has a belief that the people's vote should count, and he seems to encourage electronic voting. If our leaders could have the same disposition, Nigeria will be better by 2023, election-wise.
And this one is from Olagunjo Oladele. Says most countries in Europe have moved from electronic voting back to paper ballots. The reason is that paper ballots can be audited, they can be recounted, and they can't be hacked. I do not trust electronic voting, whether it uses blockchain or any other technology. These methods are secure in theory, but they rely on trusting the ones who implement them. Both should be competent and well-intentioned. I'm not trying to be cynical, but to the best of my knowledge, we do not have the technical knowledge to face these challenges. And Kamaldeen Adelawa was talking also about developments in Kaduna. Says the situation all over the world points to the fact that for effective and efficient service delivery, the states must resolve to firmly apply the rule of law and deploy technology in all ramifications as much as feasible. There is no other way out for now. We just have to be sincere in public service delivery, and I don't think anyone can quarrel with that. Whether or not you decide to deploy technology, sincerity is extremely important in all that we do. Thank you for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikelu.
I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.